Okay, let me get started. As you know, we have been going through the last more than 3 months going through this fantastic book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich is a combined knowledge about how to become successful from some of the greatest minds of the 20th century. And it's the result of nearly 30 years that Napoleon Hill spent interviewing these great men. And I've been playing Earl Nightingale's recording on Think and Grow Rich, where he introduces this book by Napoleon Hill. In addition, I have shared my own thoughts and things from the relevant highlights from the book that Earl Nightingale has not mentioned. So we are coming to the end now. I want you to listen to this not just for knowledge, but for application. So take notes as you listen to this and when you go through, and ask yourself how you can apply this in your life right now, or what's missing that you need to do a bit more research on. Morning, Hoxing. Napoleon Hill wrote 13 proven steps to riches, where riches are whatever you happen to want. Today, let us hear Earl Nightingale on the 13th principle. This is the last principle on the sixth sense.
The 13th and final principle is called the sixth sense. The sixth sense can be described as the sense through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. This principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles. The sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as the creative imagination. It has also been referred to as the receiving set, through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes are sometimes called hunches or inspirations. The sixth sense defies description. It cannot be described to a person who has not mastered the other principles of this philosophy, because such a person has no knowledge and no experience with which the sixth sense may be compared. The sixth sense is not something that one can take off and put on at will. Ability to use this great power comes slowly through application of the other principles we've outlined. Many individuals come into a workable knowledge of the sixth sense even before the age of 40, but more often the knowledge is not available until one is well past 50, and this for the reason that the spiritual forces with which the sixth sense is so closely related do not mature and become usable generally except through years of meditation, self-examination, and serious thought. But begin to develop it now by applying the principles we've talked about here. Remember this: man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in the form of an impulse of thought. Man's thought impulses begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent, whether those thoughts are voluntary or involuntary. Keep fear out of your mind by concentrating on the mental picture of your goal, your greatest desire.
So this is the 13th principle, the sixth sense. I just want to share with you some key points from the chapter itself. This principle is the apex of the philosophy of Think and Grow Rich. Okay. It's the apex. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only first by mastering the other 12 principles. This is what Napoleon Hill himself said, okay, on page 193. He says, if you have mastered each of the preceding 12 principles, you are now prepared to accept, without being skeptical, the stupendous claims made here. If you have not mastered the other principles, you must do so before you may determine definitely whether or not the claims made in this chapter are fact or fiction. Because when you talk about sixth sense, we are so skeptical. I ask some people here to do a daily email, and they are skeptical about the benefits. Write a journal, they're skeptical. So if I talk about the sixth sense, you just say this is just fiction. Okay, and that is why Napoleon Hill emphasizes, if you haven't done the other stuff, you are not going to believe this. Okay, but let me carry on. He talks about the creative imagination. He says the sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as the creative imagination. It has also been referred to as the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes are sometimes called hunches or inspiration. Or, maybe, we use the term intuition. Okay? Then he talks about meditation. Okay? He says this, Napoleon Hill says the sixth sense defies description. It cannot be described to a person who has not mastered the other principles of this philosophy, because such a person has no knowledge and no experience with which the sixth sense may be compared. Understanding of the sixth sense comes only by meditation through mind development from within. The sixth sense probably is the medium of contact between the finite mind of man and an infinite intelligence. And for this reason, it is a mixture of both the mental and the spiritual. It is believed to be the point at which the mind of man contacts the universal mind. Okay, now bear in mind that at this time, Napoleon Hill is using very, very generic terms, the universe, the universal mind, infinite intelligence, instead of directly referring to God, of course. Then he talks about emulating the great. He says, my experience has taught me that the next best thing to being truly great is to emulate the great by feeling and action as nearly as possible. So that means he says, emulate the great, have feeling, okay, take action, really copy what they do. Emulate, not just read about them, as nearly as possible. Okay. And he goes on to talk about this thing called invisible counselors. He shares, okay, every night over a long period of years, I held an imaginary council meeting with this group whom I call my invisible counselors. Okay, this is on page 195. Now, you recall, one of the principles we studied before was mastermind. So he's creating his mastermind of invisible counselors. Okay, and who are these invisible counselors? Okay, or why did he do it? He said, I had a very definite purpose in indulging my imagination through these nightly meetings. Nightly meetings. My purpose was to rebuild my own character so it would represent a composite of the characters of my imaginary counselors. Okay. Now, if you think of the definite purpose statement, you spend time thinking of the person you want to become. Okay? Now, then he goes on to say, during my meetings with the invisible counselors, I find my mind most receptive to ideas, thoughts, and knowledge which reach me through the sixth sense. I can truthfully say that I owe entirely to my invisible counselors full credit for such ideas, facts, or knowledge as I received through inspiration. Okay, now, many of you will think this is voodoo, okay? But this is really commonplace. It happens throughout the day. For example, when a person who has a relationship with God, he's talking habitually to God, his heavenly Father. It's really 24 hours, I would say. Some say when you're sleeping, you don't. But, one day I'll play you a tape just last week where Jackie in her sleep, I've got a 3-minute recording, where she's talking to God and singing, Jesus loves me, this I know. Now, I told you I got a surprise for you, something I'm really excited to share, because I have a perfect personal example of the sixth sense as communication from the infinite intelligence to the subconscious mind through the receiving station called the creative imagination. Last Tuesday, as we were climbing stairs, Hui Xuan raised the matter of my future Motivational Mondays. Normally when I'm reaching the end of a series, I'll ask her, hey, what shall I talk about next? But this, haven't done that yet because we're not right at the end yet. Okay? We've got another 3 weeks with Think and Grow Rich. But she raised this matter of my future Motivational Monday. She said I should consider stopping this same pattern of sharing from a book. why don't I talk about lessons from the lives of great people, she said. For example, Colonel Sanders, who at the late age founded Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I took heed to what she said, and in the past week, I've actually been compiling a list of great men and women for the next series on Motivational Monday. Well, when I started work late last week on today's Motivational Monday on the Sixth Sense, chapter 15 talks about emulating the great and having a regular conference with them as invisible counselors to develop my character, to develop my ideas. Now, what is happening here? Napoleon Hill is telling me what Chris Swan was just telling me what my next series on Motivational Monday is about. Great people to emulate. Okay, so Chris Swan has a sixth sense, and obviously I have a sixth sense. I'm in tune with this. Okay, I'm getting messages from the universe. Okay, we say nothing happens by accident. Okay, that is why we say nothing happens by accident, because there is this process like the law of gravity that takes place. Okay, so let me just go on and finish off what Napoleon Hill says in chapter 15. He talks about building character. He says, all men have become what they are because of their dominating thoughts and desires. Every deeply seated desire has the effect of causing one to seek outward expression through which that desire may be transmuted into reality. Self-suggestion is a powerful factor in building character, and that is in fact the sole principle through which character is built. He talks about age 40. Okay. He says the sixth sense is not something that one can take off and put on at will. Ability to use this great power comes slowly through application of the other principles outlined in this book. Seldom does any individual come into workable knowledge of the sixth sense before the age of 40. More often, the knowledge is not available until one is well past 50. And this for the reason that the spiritual forces with which the sixth sense is so closely related do not mature and become usable except through years of meditation, self-examination, and serious thought. Okay, so this is the principle of the slight age. I remember when there was a time when I was doing Tai Chi, and my Tai Chi master, could move people around with his force. Okay, and the people he could move around more easily were those who had spent a lot of time in meditation. Somehow, when they were in meditation, their bodies were relaxed and able to receive the energy that he transmitted. Now, as a beginner, I just stood there like a piece of wood. I couldn't move, unless the guy physically took me and threw me, because it takes time to get into that state. It takes practice. Okay. So, the other reason why we talk about age 40 also is when we talked about the principle of sex transmutation is, because before 40, you're so distracted with all your hormones and all that you don't really settle down and discipline yourself. Okay. But the good news to most of you listening here, most of you are past 40, have been through life, been through the school of hard knocks. Okay. And what you resist will persist. So you can decide you're not going to resist anymore, and you're going to let this power take over you. The power that is completely within your control, because it's all about thought. You can control your thought, and your thought controls the sending station and controls what you receive. That's how powerful it is. Okay, really, really exciting. Now, next week, we finish all the principles. Next week, we'll look at the final chapter, chapter 15, which is how to outwit the 6 ghosts of fear.